Good morning. So, if you are joining me, well, it's morning here on the East Coast of the United States. If you are joining me today live, then you are here for the Lunar Nodes webinar. We are going to cover that the Lunar Nodes have now arrived in Aries and Libra. Hang on, I'm just organizing. Okay. And even if you're not watching live, of course you have the ability to go back and to rewatch this, even if you are joining live. But it was very lovely to connect with you all. And before we started recording, I got to see some familiar faces, and so that's always nice to reconnect. And some of you are my students. So as I record this, it's August 5th, 2023. And for those that do not know who I am, or this is your first webinar with me, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I am an astrologer. I'm also a psychic medium located in the New York City area. So I'm actually right outside of Manhattan in New Jersey. And I actually created Empowering Astrology way back in 2010, because at the time I felt like there wasn't this voice in astrology that really sort of talked about astrology from a holistic view. I'm certain there was other people that were talking about astrology at that point, but at least on the online arena, I actually started in Twitter and before moving to Facebook and then Instagram. And that's how a lot of you got to know who I am. And for me, and you hear me say it every week in my live, the astrology is 50%. You're the other 50%. How can we use astrology, the parts that we can work with, and sort of, we'll say, respecting the parts that we can't change? How do we work with that, and how do we use it to grow and evolve in our lives? So this is just a quick rundown of the agenda, and perhaps this is more for those that are watching on the replay, just to give us a sense of structure, because we do need to look at some astronomy today. And I know maybe it's going to be a little bit technical for a short bit, but I think it's really important. I feel that it's really important that we understand the astronomy, because lunar nodes, and if I sort of took a poll of a lot of people, they would have no idea what the lunar nodes are. And even in astrology, it sounds a little bit strange. What are the lunar nodes? And they're actually not physical bodies in the sky. I can't point to the sky and see the webinar. Hang on, somebody's just having problems with the link. Let me just get people the link to the webinar. Okay. Perils of doing this. Are you back? Okay. So we need to understand the astronomy before we can understand the astrology. And I think the lunar nodes are actually really important. They open up a portal. I know that's a little bit of a big word, but things can come and people can come in and out of our lives through the power of the nodes. And there is a little bit of this modern take on the lunar nodes. It is not rooted in classical astrology, that the nodes talk about the arc of the soul. It's something that I use in my work. I see it as somebody who's an intuitive and somebody who has sort of a deep rooting in sort of esoteric wisdom, but you don't have to necessarily believe that. And then, what are the lunar nodes in Aries and Libra as we sort of go into the beginning of 2025? And then, of course, I'm sure you all are interested in what this means for your sign. So part one, introduction. The lunar nodes are two of the most important points in the sky. And I realize you're like, how is that possible? How am I just hearing about the lunar nodes and how important they are? It's because number one, the next slide, we'll see the eclipses, they make eclipses happen, but they're two of the most important points in the sky, because they really drive the arc of events, both on a personal and a collective level, in that 18-month period of time. Lunar nodes make eclipses happen. And it's probably not the first time I'm going to say this throughout our time together today, but it's something that the lunar nodes and eclipses, they go hand in hand. And when we know what the lunar nodes are, we know, and when they are activated, we know that we have eclipse-like energy in the sky, which we'll get more into. They are a current of energy. They are a vortex. As I said earlier, the nodes will bring people and events into our lives. And if not that specific, certainly from a theme, an archetype, something will start to pull and reveal itself to you that maybe is different than what we've been navigating over the last previous 18 months when the lunar nodes were in 2 different signs. The lunar nodes write the story arc of our lives, something we will go into a little bit more. It's just something that I've seen over and over again, especially if you've lived a bit of life. There's typically a very clear correlation between events and experiences on a thematic level that run along the nodes. This isn't a webinar about the nodes in our own astrology. That would be like a 3-hour webinar. But it's to really give us an introduction of what the nodes are for Aries and Libra, but sort of to hint at that they do talk about our own personal astrology and the story arc of our lives. The lunar nodes parallel major life milestones, and because the lunar nodes and the eclipses go hand in hand, eclipses have a little bit of a reputation in astrology for making change happen, and sometimes sudden change happen. There's a reputation for a reason, but and as an astrologer, I've seen the eclipses, the lunar nodes really indicate birth of a child, a marriage, a major move, even positive things in somebody's career. So even though they have this reputation of making things happen, sometimes they can herald positive, life milestones in our life. The lunar nodes also give direction. So there is a personal element to this in the sense of your own lunar nodes, or where is the direction in the sky right now? There's this sort of basic idea that the north node is north, collective north, thematic, archetypical north, and the south node is the past. Over the next 18 months, so that's the duration that the lunar nodes will spend in Libra and Aries, we are sort of working through Libra and Aries as an archetype. Aries is going to be true north for us, and this is something that we'll get more into throughout the webinar, but we all have our own personal experience with Aries, both as a sign, as an archetype, and we'll learn more what that sign and archetype means. But Libra, because the South Node is in Libra, we have work to do with the sign. It means we have to go back to the past. We have to look at relationships, for example. And because of the eclipses and just sort of the rough time frame of the eclipses into the beginning of 2025 is we're going to have eclipses in Aries and Libra. In fact, we're going to have an eclipse in Libra on October 14th of 2023. 6 months after that, we're going to have a pair of eclipses in Aries and Libra in 2024. We're going to have an eclipse, and I believe it's in Libra in October 2024. And we do have some eclipses in Aries and Libra in 2025, and that closes out the cycle. And these periods, roughly October, roughly April, parts of March, is when we're going to see this story get activated. And again, we all have our own personal relationship with Aries and Libra. It might be our own sign. It might be the sign of our career. It might be the sign of relationships, for example. But beyond that, we have our own relationship with the archetype. Remember, there are 12 signs in the zodiac. They're not just 12 people in the world, but there's a range of experience and a range of archetype that is within each of the 12 signs that really paint this richer portrait of life. Wherever Aries or Libra is in our own personal astrology, we will see change, and for some, marked change over the next 18 months. If you have planets, major degrees, I'm getting a little bit technical for a moment, within a certain amount of distance of these eclipses, you might see a big turning point, for example. I know you hear me say the astrology is 50%, you're the other 50%, but eclipses, they talk about an energy that we can't change. We can, of course, have free will and we can show up during this time in a certain way, but almost like a change of seasons, almost like a change of hour, that part we can't change.